Welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. Our theme for 2025 is the future of work. Meaning is the new money. In a world shaped by rapid innovation and constant change, the pursuit of purpose and impact has never been more important. I'm Dr. John Dentico, your host, bringing over 30 years of experience in leadership, strategic thinking, and purpose-driven innovation. Here, we tackle the pressing challenges of our time, from the rise of artificial intelligence to the growing need for meaning in the workplace. Together, we'll uncover how leaders can ethically integrate AI to enhance decision-making and keep humanity at the heart of their organizations. Remember, amidst all the technological advancements, in the end, it's always about the people. This podcast is your resource for actionable tools, thought-provoking discussions, and inspiring stories. It's time to go beyond leadership development and focus on leadership impact, creating workplaces where people thrive, innovation flourishes, and meaning truly becomes the new currency. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now, let's throttle up and dive into today's episode. Hello again and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Dr. John Dentico. With me today is Harlan Hammack, a sought-after business and leadership coach, executive mentor, and thought partner. He has over 25 years of management consulting experience in the areas of organizational change and business transformation. Coach Harlan is also a speaker, author, and host of the popular The Courage to Lead podcast, where he interviews entrepreneurs, business leaders, civic leaders, and industry thought leaders about courage and leadership. And I am truly pleased to have him here today with me on the podcast. Good morning, Harlan.
Good morning,
How
John.
are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad you're here. So I'm adding sort of a personal touch this year, Harlan, to my podcast. So I'd like to ask you this. Tell me a bit about yourself. Where did you grow up, and what in your mind were some of the fundamental influences in your life?
Where to start? I was born and raised in Southern California, currently live in Atlanta, but born and raised in Southern California. I worked at Lockheed Aircraft out in Burbank, California for years. And that had a big influence on me. I was working in the Skunk Works, the top secret side.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the guys in there were so creative. The engineers would come down and say, we're thinking of doing something like this. And it was up to us to help them kind of work through that thought process and build things. We were making small models that would go in the wind tunnels. We were doing small parts that would go up into one of the test planes to see how everything worked and how things had to go around. So just that whole creative side. I had one guy that I worked with, his name was Bud. And the engineers would come down and they'd come up to him and look at him and go, you know what, never mind, because this won't work. Bud goes, no, wait, give me a shot. And that was his way of them getting him to do the work for him and stuff. But just really, really enjoyed that. So I've always been on the creative side. I love sitting down and brainstorming with people and trying to come up with new ideas for their business.
Kelly Johnson.
Love Kelly Johnson. Ben Rich.
Kelly Johnson, the innovator, SR-71, the
U2.
The U2.
Yep.
Man, and how he affected that, how he could create these marvelous pieces of work in such a short period of time is just truly a model that I think is so appropriate for today. We may get into that in a little bit. Let me ask you this, Harlan. Do you have a mission statement, and can you tell me and my listeners and viewers what it is and how you arrived at it?
Yeah, mission statement, and it's on my website and things, basically to help turn common sense into common practice. If you've worked with humans at any point, you realize that common sense isn't very common, right? So in business, you can't just expect your employees to know all the time what to do. You want to try to set some guidelines for them, explain to them, here's what's expected, set up standard operating procedures, whatever it happens to be, and guide them to do things the way that you want in your company. I work with a lot of small and mid-sized companies, and so they're trying to train their employees up to where they can send them off to do the work, knowing they're going to do it the company way. They're going to do it the way. It doesn't stop innovation, but it keeps them from going too far off the ranch and to get things done. So yeah, turning common sense into common practice.
It's a great line. I like that a lot. Simple, clean, focused. I think one of the best, I have to say, one of the best compliments I've ever gotten about my leadership work was it was based on common sense. And that was great for me to hear that. That hey,
Sure.
listen, we're not talking about rocket science here. We're talking about working with people. There are other people who worry about rocket science, like Elon and people like that. It's
Right.
just that's not my bag, so to speak. Let me ask you this, Harlan. A couple of things. I want to propose this idea to you. We'll have an interesting discussion, I think. I know your background is in change management.
Mhm.
And suppose I said to you that I think at times, at least for me, change management is an oxymoron. Okay.
Yep.
And here's the reason why. There is another change function that seems to be overlooked, and that is change leadership.
Yes.
Okay. Because for me, leadership and management are two different processes.
Yeah.
Change leadership is about significant or transforming change, where change management is about incremental change, sort of a tweaking to what the big change is. I'd love to get your reflection on that.
No, totally agree. Yeah, change management. We used to work with the companies that were undergoing some major change, right? Anything that impacted the people, processes, or the technology. So it could be a software implementation, a process reengineering, a merger acquisition type thing where you're blending two families, right? And so we'd come in and help the leadership team understand the change, the impacts that change was going to have on their business, and then help them communicate the change and lead their people through the change, right? Our goal was to try to make sure the employees were as productive after the change as they were before, and hopefully better. And it is a misnomer. Change management, you don't really manage the change per se, because change is going to happen, whether you want it to or not, whether you expect it to or not. Change happens. You're trying to manage the output, the outcome of that change, right? To make sure that everybody's coming along, following along. We talk a lot about alignment and adoption. Make sure everybody's coming along the same path to get to it. And leadership is, I think it's key, because a good leader kind of shows this is the future, this is where we're going, our future state. Sets up that vision for everybody so they know and they can see it and sense it and feel it, and they start driving towards that change naturally. You're not behind them trying to push and crack the whip or anything like that. You're guiding, right, by that vision to show them how to get to that change. Yeah.
I was going to say that for me, leadership and management are complementary processes. You need both of them. There's no
Sure.
question about it. It's just that everybody talks about change, but they never segment, if you will, the difference between transforming change, significant change. An organization realizes they just can't keep doing the same things over again.
Yeah.
And I align that, by the way, with strategic thinking. Strategic thinking. And for me, management is much more on the strategic planning side. And the way I differentiate between those two is strategic planning looks to find answers to questions. Normally, the senior leaders in the organization put together maybe the goals for next year. Okay, fine, that's great.
Right.
But strategic thinking is making sure you're asking yourself the right questions. Because as you well know, the halls of business are lined with the empty carcasses of organizations, right? Billion-dollar organizations who never took the time to ask themselves the right questions. I mean, can you imagine 35 years ago walking up as a person from the future and saying, hey, you folks at Sears, you're going out of business. You're not asking yourself the questions you should be asking. I'd love reflection on that.
Oh, yeah. Sears, Kodak would be another one.
They're making a comeback.
Are they really?
Yeah, Kodak is making a comeback.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of got
Go ahead.
bypassed and sidelined a little bit. Yeah, you talk about strategic, and management is more tactical. It's the day-to-day, right? Driving things through. Where on the strategic level, these guys are looking at the vision, asking the right questions, hopefully. How do we do this? How do we improve this? Where do we go from here? A lot of the change that we did, like I said, was more on the tactical side, but we had to work with the leadership team to ask them those questions. What are the impacts? What are you doing currently that isn't working for you, that's prompting this change? What do you hope to get out of it? What is the outcome? We'd help them set their KPIs and KRIs, their result indicators. What are the key results you're looking to get for this? Because you can set up processes and everybody follows the process and you manage the KPI. Yes, they're following our process. If it's not leading to the result you're after, then what's the point, right? So we wanted to make sure we're achieving the goals that they had set out to achieve. Yeah, great projects. I've worked for a lot of different companies around the U.S. and Canada and Mexico and over in the U.K. and in Germany. We had a project in Germany. It's been fun just to see how different people handle different things.
Right. Well, and it goes back to the original ideas from W. Edwards Deming. The whole thing is to look at the process.
Yep.
Are you getting what you want? No, then you have to go back to the beginning and say, why is that? What do we need to tweak here? What do we need to alter here in order to get what we want at the end? And it just makes sound solid, common sense.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I want to chat for a bit, Harlan, about your coaching model, the 3 S's, if you will. Can you explain what they are and how they work?
Yeah. So when I'm working with my clients and stuff, we follow the model. It's 3 S's: simplify, strategize, and systematize. First thing, simplify. Don't try to fix everything at once. Let's talk through your business. We always go through an assessment of the business to find out that one thing that is off track or off kilter that we need to dial in. So simplify, focus on that one thing and make sure that you get that piece right. For one of the clients I'm working with right now, cash flow is a big issue, right? They have cash rich. The next thing they're having to borrow money to make payroll. It's just right, flip-flop. So we go through and say, okay, let's simplify. Let's work on your cash flow. Then we look at strategies. For every business process, there are different strategies you can use. If we talk about somebody wants to lose weight, you can lose weight multiple ways. Exercise more, eat less. Some combination of those are some medical intervention, if you will. So those are 3 different strategies. For each one of the strategies, there are systems or steps you have to follow to implement that strategy. So as I'm working with our clients, we'll find that one thing that we're going to work on. We'll come up with a couple different strategies, and then we'll look at the steps involved and to see which one will actually get us there, get us the result we're after quickly. And then once we go through that process and implement that strategy, we achieve the result or get very close, get that dialed in. Then we look at the next thing on the chart. What's the next thing that we can work on? Because too many times business owners will come in and think we need to change everything. They're changing their logos and their marketing, and they're changing their pricing, and something works, but they don't know what it was. And so they don't know how to replicate that. So they're in that hole again and stuff, and they try moving everything. It's like, don't go in and start flipping switches and dials and things. Let's pick one thing, talk about it, identify exactly what it is, what's the result we're after, and then put a strategy in place and a system in place to implement.
Great. I wanted to ask you this. I'm going to make a statement, give an opinion, and I'd love to get your response to this. Since you worked at the holy grail of this particular of innovation in many respects, this is what I see. The post-COVID environment we're living through, the residue, where now people, let's talk about people, are not just looking for a paycheck. They're looking for things like values alignment. They're looking for involvement in the decision-making processes and training and learning that advances their career. Those to me are the big 3. Add to that the incredible hyper development of artificial intelligence that is coming on the scene. Yesterday, Elon Musk previewed Grok 3 that is now using 200,000 NVIDIA processors to create coherence, as they call it. This thing is coherent. You ask it a question, it comes back with a coherent answer. Okay, and of course, they're moving. Eventually, what Musk wants to do is go to 1 million processors, maybe beyond that.
Wow.
Getting close to, I think they call it AGI. In any case, the way I see this, and I know you were there, I was there at the beginning. I can remember in the early 90s when browsers were just coming online back then. And we saw the distribution of knowledge. We saw the distribution of information. And certainly I was part of a group that said, if this continues on, the power of information and knowledge will be in everyone's hands. And now today, it's on steroids with AI, so to speak. I believe that the models of leadership that we've carried over from the industrial era are being shredded. They're being absolutely shredded because just ask this question, who's the smartest person? So along with that, and we don't know, maybe the person that's the youngest person in the room who's working on AI systems 3 or 4 or 5 hours a day. I mean, that's the point. So now we're looking at this and we're shredding the models of leadership. And I think one of the other things that I've noticed is, and here's where the connection to the Skunk Works is. I'm thinking now, as we move into the next period of the 21st century, that things like rapid prototyping are going to really come to the fore. SpaceX, for example. How did this company that started 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was, now lead this ventures into space? Well, they weren't afraid to make mistakes.
Right.
They weren't afraid to try something that didn't work, but they knew it didn't work. So I see the world now almost in a convergence in rapid prototyping in the future, which means that the leadership is now an influence relationship where anybody can have influence. And I would love to get your perspective on that, having worked at Lockheed, in terms of this, what I would say a significant movement for whomever, products or services, it doesn't matter, into the world of rapid prototyping.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the key. When I worked at Lockheed, we had projects, but they were waterfall projects where you had one task, and then when that task was done, the next task happened and went through as waterfall. There were a lot of times where you got down towards the end of the project and realized, ooh, this isn't going to work out because this wasn't correct, right? With the new model, the agile model, where you put something out, have it tested, have it looked at, find out all the problems with it, pull it back in, tweak it, put it back out, tweak it, right? And just keep going until you build these models. That's what's happening with that rapid application design, right? RAD, but it's prototyping. And yeah, I think that's where a lot of companies are going to now. So you get these things that are coming out a lot faster and getting better faster. We learn from our mistakes. If you have a success, you don't learn as much from it. But when you fall flat, when something doesn't work, you learn your lessons. Hopefully you learn the lessons, take those in and improve. And that's the best way to do it, is through that. So yeah, I think AI is going to help us in those areas, and being able to manage in an agile environment, I think, is going to be tough. Like I said, it's not only those relationships, but on my podcast, we talk about the courage. Leaders have to have the courage to say, I don't know. They have to have the courage to say, I'm not the smartest person in the room. There's got to be somebody that knows how to do this, and be open to bring those other people in. Intellectual courage that, hey, I don't know everything. But it used to be you had managers who they had to be the smartest person in the room, and they didn't take a lot of advice from anybody and stuff. And that's changed a lot. Now you have the managers who come in and say, okay, here's the issue. How can we solve this? And they're more collaborative. And I think that's important.
I got to tell you, Harlan, I would not be wrong in telling you I've been waiting for over 30 years for this moment in time. Because 30 years ago, as part of a group that, again, we saw the distribution of knowledge being the wide distribution of knowledge and information through the internet back then, 30 years ago. And we developed foresight, not so much vision. We were able to see, develop foresight and look and say, if this continues, it's changing everything. It's changing the whole dynamic of leadership. My model of leadership that I started developing 30 years ago is based on one premise only, and that's contribution. In other words, we have a problem, just as you said. We have an issue. Anybody got any ideas? Anybody want to take this on? Anybody want to work with somebody else here and see if we can forge ahead on some of these ideas? And that's why I say I've been waiting 30 years, because I think the model that I developed really its day has arrived in terms of whatever that issue is, whether it's developing a new service, developing a new product, developing a new aircraft. A few weeks I'm going to speak at a cyber conference. And again, this is the security and cyber. Everybody needs to be on board. And one of the greatest tools, I think, is collaboration. So it's just so amazing to me how it's all moving so rapidly, but we can't. And here's where the problem is. And it's what I believe this to be the case, is what the Skunk Works stepped aside. How they stepped aside from the massive bureaucracy, with Kelly Johnson running the show and saying, hey, wait a minute, we're going to do it this way. This is the way we can get to results quickly. And so I'd love to get any other reflection from you on that.
Oh, yeah. You bring up Kelly Johnson, Ben Rich at Skunk Works. I was in one of the big hangars on the flight line, and they would actually come down and crawl up on the plane that we were working on and stuff and talk about new designs. What can we do differently here? How can we do this? They were right there. A lot of times Kelly Johnson would take off his jacket and roll up his sleeves and dig in to look at things. And it's like that inspiration. He's not just somebody sitting up here pointing. It's like, no, he's right down there with us, asking questions and looking at things. That was awesome. I had a guy on my podcast a couple weeks ago, Greg Bennick, and he talks about reverberation. An idea is like a pebble dropped in a flat pond, right? Ripples out. Reverberation is where you have other things in that pond to where now those ripples touch something and ripple back. And you start getting this feedback. And I love environments like that. Like I told you, I love to brainstorm with my clients. We'll sit around with the leadership team and talk about, well, what if we did this? How would that work? Well, this guy comes up with, oh, that's going to impact us this way. And then somebody goes, yeah, but we could do. And next thing you know, those ideas start growing because you're sharing, and that initial idea is now reverberating through and it's growing and becoming something tangible. And I think that's key, is to keep that reverberation going. Have as many different people as you can. Listen to those voices. You never know. People will bring things from their previous employer, right? That they'll share. It's like, hey, we used to do this. It may be a different industry altogether, but this is what we used to do over there. Could we apply something like that here? And it may be no, but that sparks other ideas in other people. And that just starts growing. So yeah, I think the collaboration is definitely a key. And don't be afraid of collaboration, right? Put your idea out there and see what happens to it. It could grow. It could be, maybe your idea isn't that good, but it's going to spark somebody else's idea that's going to come to the solution you're looking for.
And it goes back to a couple of points you made. Number one is the courage of a leader to be authentic and to be vulnerable. And to say, I don't have to have the answer. I can work with the team to hopefully find the answer. So to be open to it. And again, that's the difference. I've been using this metaphor lately, and that is, or this example lately, is that for 50 or 60 years in the world of leadership, we raised a generation of Jedi Knights. And the notion being, at any time that we need, they'll brandish their light sword, come down and vanquish the problems and issues that lie before us. Today, if you're going to create this collaborative environment, you're going to create an environment where people come and contribute. You kind of have to think yourself as a leader as being more like Yoda.
Yeah.
I'm the facilitator here. I'm maybe the teacher here. I may be the person who wants to bring this in, gives you the challenges, like you did with Luke. You get in the cave, Luke, that kind of thing. Here are the challenges. You're going to have to make your way. In a sense, they're raising a generation of Jedi Knights that hopefully someday will be more Yodas. It's a reverse of what we've thought seats have to be. Right. Yeah, here they are. No, you're trying to create an environment where people come to do their best work every day, where they can derive meaning, the motivational force on earth, meaning, where they can derive meaning from the work that they do every day. I'd love to get your reflection on that idea.
And like you said earlier, it's about the questions. Are you asking the right questions to draw that out? Yeah, I love that whole metaphor, because I think everybody says, oh, the millennials, they want this, they want that. They want to feel like they're adding value. They want to feel like they're needed and necessary. We all want that. It's just now with the internet and social media the way it is, we're seeing, hey, other people feel the same way I did. When I worked at Lockheed, you didn't say stuff like that. I want to feel X, right? Now everybody says, yeah, I want to feel like what I'm doing is valuable, that I'm valued, my ideas have merit. I want to feel like I'm bigger than myself. The things that I'm working on are important to the world. We all want that. And I think pulling that out of people, letting them know that they're valued and asking the right questions to get them to come out of their shell a little bit and contribute. It's got to be a safe environment to contribute to. You can put an idea out without feeling stupid. Nobody's going to, bop you on the head if you stand up and say, hey, here's an idea. So how can we use that? What else can that bring to the table? And just be open for that. And it does. It takes courage. Absolutely.
My number one function in my leadership model is safety. Number one. You have to feel safe to say what you want to say, good or bad.
Yeah.
And create environments. So maybe we'll think about that, or that's that kind of a thing. So I absolutely agree with that. I think we're in a wonderful place. And let me just make one point because I was thinking about this. When you talk about we all want that, and I'm a boomer, I think I certainly wanted that. But to me, it's like a layer cake. Maybe that layer of making a difference was layer 2 or 3. But today it's number one. It's on top of making an impact. I want to feel like people listen to me, they respect me, and I have impact. That's the number one layer today. That's frosting on the top, if you will.
Right.
But we had that. We had it deep down, the people who served. I was a military officer. I said, that meant something to me, a deal to me. It still means something to me today. So I think you're absolutely right about that. And the other thing too is, and you pointed this out in your mind, understanding that an organization is a system of systems. And every system interacts on every other system. And I've used that metaphor many times, the pebble in the pond. You throw it in the corner of the pond, guess what? The ripples come all the way across the pond anyway, even though you threw the pebble in the corner, because there is this systemic inference, this systemic reaction across where no matter where you make change, it affects other things in the organization. And I think that's so very, very important. Here's a question for you, Harlan.
Okay.
As a podcast host, I'm sure you are seeing varying issues and challenges brought into focus by your guests. I know I have. What is it that you're seeing from your guests? Can you give me maybe 2 or 3 of the most repetitive issues guests keep talking?
That's a great question. I've done
Looking for the
256
trend.
episodes. 256 episodes. And trying to think back of the common. I think because a lot of my guests had failures early in life and then found their niche, right? They found that one thing that they loved to do. They ended up being good at it. They realized people needed that. And I think that's the spark, the light bulb turns on, right? This is something that I do that people actually need help with this. And then once they start sharing that, their success just kind of takes off. It's finding that, not only what you're good at, but what does the world need? And I think a lot of these people have found that. And that's kind of their story that they tell on the podcast. I did this, I failed at it, I tried this, I failed. But then I opened myself up in this way. And Greg Bennick, the guy that I just talked to on the podcast, he loved coins and he wanted to be what's the term that is mesmatist?
Numismatic?
Yeah.
Numismatic.
He loved coins. He had an old coin and it just sparked his interest. And he convinced his school to have an after-school program for coin collectors. And he found a guy to come in and teach that class. Well, when he got ready to sign up, somebody had already signed up for that class and he wasn't able to get in. And the only thing they had available was juggling. So he figures, all right, I'll go in and sit through the juggling and maybe I'll pick up the next one next time. He got so good at juggling that as a teenager, he would go around and start doing shows and making money. And he saw that he could entertain people. He could bring ideas to people and use juggling as an analogy for those ideas. And that kind of kicked off his career. And he's a keynote speaker, he's a TEDx speaker. He's written a couple books all about this. And his whole framework in life was, what if? What if I go and do this? What are the possibilities? And life is full of possibilities. And it's finding that and keeping an open mind and try. You never know until you try it. And what's the worst that could happen? It doesn't work out? Fine, try something else, But what if? That's his philosophy, is what if?
I think it's a great philosophy. I think there are so many people. I was mentioning this to a previous guest. When you go to the assisted living villages or the independent living villages, and they've asked people, in these places, what's your greatest regret? And the number one greatest regret is I didn't take enough risks. And they're looking back and saying, I could have done that. I should have done that. I might have done that. And I think that's important for people to understand that, it's live it. Live your life. And there's this one, I can't remember where I got this. It said, when life is over, I want to be used up. I want to be used. I've given it everything I could. And it wasn't an easy journey. I always tell people that my leadership journey over the course of 30 years, I gave a lot to leadership, and leadership took a lot from me. It took a lot from me. A lot of pain along the way.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And you just have to keep forging through. As long as you have, as I said, that mission, that perspective that you're here to do something. You're here to make a difference. The real question that any person who wants to be a leader has to ask, do I want to make a difference? That's really the bottom line for me. So what I'd like to do is ask you my last question, if I could, and that is the magic wand question. And that is, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it at any issue or problem that you see in the world in which you work, what would that problem be, and why did you choose it?
It would probably be communication. I don't think people communicate enough. I don't think we're set in our ways, we have our ideas, and we're not open to listening to other people. You can talk to somebody else with a different faith, a different political bend. You can talk to them, and you don't have to agree with what they say, but you hear them, and it helps you expand your world a little bit. And I think we stop communicating. We don't communicate. We get angry at people because they don't think the way we do, or get angry at people because they don't like the same things we do. It's like, what's there to get angry about? Talk about it. Just talk. And I think if people spent more time, in fact, I'd read someplace years ago about a library where you could actually go and sit down and have a conversation with somebody. They were just sitting at tables, and you walk in and sit down and you communicate with them, talk to them. You have no idea what the conversation is going to be about, but it's somebody new, which gives you a little bit more to add to your database that you can use in the future. And then you move to the next table and talk to somebody else. I love stuff like that. I think if we spent more time communicating with people, a lot less time hating and holding people back. So yeah, if I could do something, it would get people to step outside themselves and have communications, talk to people.
Agreed. And I think that it's more than conversation. To me, it's dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that we're going to trade meanings here. I may say something that will change your mind. You may say something that will change my mind. But we have to be in dialogue. We have to be receptive and open to that. And I agree with you. I mean, I think in many respects, we've lost the art of communicating in that way. And it's very, very sad. Yeah. It's really, it impinges in a lot of ways on the First Amendment, that you can express your opinion freely. And as long as we respect each other, we can differ and move away from it. And later on, I said, well, I really have to think about that. That was some really interesting points. So I absolutely agree. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful magic wand.
Yeah. My wife taught me years ago, that's interesting. Tell me more. You may not understand what the person is saying or agree with them, but don't shut them down. Right? Always seek to learn, seek to listen, and learn.
Right.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. Yeah. How does that work?
My favorite line is, help me understand.
Yeah. Help me understand. Perfect.
Help me understand. I may not get it yet. So give me, the synapse in my brain has not closed, the right one.
Right.
I need more instruction.
Yep.
So anyway, thanks so much. Listen, Harlan, I had a great time this morning with you. Thank you so very much for your time to be here on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I appreciate it so much. I wish you all success, all health in the future. Thank you so very much for your time today.
Thanks, John.